So welcome to the show today. Today I have Florian Kemmerich on the show, who is the managing partner of Bamboo Capital Partners. And I'm very excited to talk to your story. You recently did an interview with Duke's Copy TV as well. And I saw some really great nuggets there. So I'm very excited to do this interview with you as well. So thank you, Florian, for being on the show. And let's dive right into your story. So who's Florian? And what's the story behind you and your journey that got we to where we are today?
Well, I'm born in the southern part of Germany in Black Forest, grew up at the Swiss border. So when I moved there initially with my parents, there's a story about, because I was arriving in an area where they speak a different dialect, basically the Swiss German. So I had to learn the dialect, otherwise I wouldn't be there. So I adopted as a young age, adopted myself because I've been relocating many times in my life. At the same time also, you have challenges. So when I was a kid in school, my father, a doctor, my mother was a teacher in a village. So I was kind of, from the upper class and didn't speak the dialect. So I had a hard time with the boys, and sometimes they were really physically, which led me to do judo. So I joined judo at the age of 5, and I cannot do things halfway. So I went the whole way through. I ended up in the German first division in the Bundesliga and the national team. 15 years later, I went to a sports boarding school because sports was too dominant on the school side, so I could fit on both sides until the age of 20, basically. And then at the age of 20, I was looking in the boarding school, I saw the cyclists, they were earning a lot of money. Tennis were earning money. But at judo, you had the nice trophy, but nothing else left. So at that time, basically, I went to the military service, and I used that one also to basically, I seized sports, and I moved over first to do my military service. And the military service was funny also, I have vertigo. So then it's, of course, obvious when you have vertigo that you become a parachutist. So I went to become a parachutist because, there's a challenge, let's tackle it. So next one. And then at a later stage, I never had any really musical lessons or basic teaching about it, but I wanted to create a band. So I got some friends together. We created a band, and at the end, we had a band where we are playing, in front of thousands of people. The carnival in southern Germany and Switzerland, the big houses or some. We were playing, and since then, this has been my passion: music, singing, bass, contrabass, and a little bit of guitar. And that's basically replaced my sports activity before. And then later on, I went to the healthcare sector because I thought, what professions could be interesting. And I was intrigued about marketing, not knowing what marketing really means at that stage, but it sounds kind of interesting. It sounds good. International marketing, and I was doing Bachelor of Business Administration, but also in parallel, it's a dual system, then entering the healthcare industry. And also in the healthcare industry, I was always looking, how much more can I do and how much more can I help? So I really was focusing a lot on business development side, initially sales, product management, business development, but then I was sent very early on to Mexico. In Mexico, there was a joint venture going on with a Mexican partner. There were certain issues. So I was sent there to basically, see how things go and decide whether we keep that one or we get out of the joint venture. So whether we buy it or we sell it. At the end, we decided to buy. Yeah, so that was part of the process of the first early deal I was involved in. Later on, I moved to the US, and then I moved back to Europe, always in healthcare. Was on a business development side. We did some also technology spin-off and some exciting stuff in parallel. And years later, I ended up back in Mexico, the same company, but now as a managing director. And then I was also taking over the leadership in Latin America. And since then, basically, I moved from a big corporate life and said, what's next? What could be fun and do something else? So I joined in 2008 in March. A late-stage startup, probably the worst time, for financing, period. We were burning, $1.5 million cash per month. Yeah, we needed capital come in. Was supposed to one US big bank was about to join. And then that was in December 2007. And in 2008, basically the bank was close to be bankrupt because it was the financial crisis. So we did a rough ride and restructured the company, building it further out. But also at the same time, we had chasing cash. Yeah. So we did a historical financing of the company. That was part of it because part of the capital I brought to the table. And that was in an early stage. Was at the end a good success, and later on, also the company got sold. And then I moved on, and I did created a biotech division for the Olympus Corporation in Japan. Also commercially set up and things. So this was a fun project, really, from initially proposing Olympus to invest in biotech and to acquire a division, to then run it and execute it. And then there was this, the group had a financial turbulence, and the stock exchange at that time was a lot under pressure, and then basically they restructured and focused back. And since then, basically, I left big corporate and said enough. And since then, I do my own things. I've been in private equity. I've done also some investments. I've led also some capital raises for some companies. I created a consulting firm focusing on startups and turnarounds in the healthcare life sciences, until I met my dear friend, neighbor, and now partner, the founder of Bamboo. And he told me about impact investing. And at that stage, I did not really know what impact investing was. I said, you can invest, but what is impact? So he told me it's social impact investing. He said, oh yeah, philanthropy. He said, no, it's not philanthropy. And I had learned that basically you can focus and have a scope of doing good, investing in companies which are focusing on doing sustainable things, and at the same time have financial returns. And then if I saw that also that there are certain sectors, because of my healthcare background, he said, we have some healthcare exposures. Could you have a look at that? So I looked at the exposures, and they were really exciting because it's a primary care delivery platform we've invested in India and also in Indonesia. And now, thanks to technology, which is also a little bit of my background of the things, you can actually scale. You can scale the impact and scale the financial returns. Where maybe impact investing in the past has been more frugal technology for frugal population. So the financial returns were more challenging to do, specifically as we only invest in emerging markets, in companies benefiting the low-income population. But now when you take technology, you basically have a possibility, historical possibility, and that's maybe 3-4 years old, due to the cell phone connection of the population. Then the mobile money wave. Now the next wave is really to disrupt or actually leapfrog the electricity grid, so that you don't produce, wire, and sell electricity anymore, but you really to generate it on the spot. And that changes the life big time. So the exciting stuff is when at the end, Jean-Philippe said, Florian, why don't you join? And I really invested and I joined full-time, left everything else beside, to focus on technology leapfrogging, poverty, energy, and healthcare. That's where we are today. And this is very exciting. It's a part of the world, of course, I know emerging markets, I know technology and transactions, I know also the industry, which is actually very exciting because now industry, we have more and more companies also doing strategic investments beyond their core business and looking also into how to expand their market. And here we're talking about underserved population, basically half of the world's population, which in the past could not participate in the economy, mainly due to two reasons: access and affordability. And technology resolves both of that. So at the end, what you're doing is a consumer financing mechanism, so that they have the access to the technology, but also the price point to start climbing up the ladder. So it's an amazing effect. It's not an easy way. And again, it probably against all the common beliefs that people say you are in countries where compliance, or crimes might be a problem. It is not really, because we're not dealing with the government. We're just looking at a commercial base, to support companies which have the right price point and use the technology to deliver and sell their goods and services.
Now, this is really, really interesting. I want to take a step back quickly and talk about this combination that impact investing offers, basically, because It seems like your entire career has been focused on industries, markets, areas, things, ventures that do some sort of good. It's not just about the commercial side, but also it's not just about philanthropy in a sense or charity, but it has also been commercial in most settings. So it feels like you've been an impact investor your entire career already by investing your time and money as well into ventures, into things that have these combinations of doing good and also being commercially viable, so to say. And it seems like now you just mastered this, which is now impact investing basically. And of course, your main vehicle now, which is Bamboo Capital Partners. What is it really about impact investing? This combination of commercial viability, so to say, and the actual social impact. What is it really that drives you in this area and has driven your entire career to be based more or less on this area?
Yeah, you're making a good analogy here. And indeed, yes, looking backwards, probably my main motor and my enthusiasm of tackling challenges and doing things, wanting to make a difference, was really about how can I ensure that what I do is what I like, not to earn money, because yes, you earn money with it if you do it well, but really to have others benefiting from it. Yes, and that's probably, you're absolutely right. And of course, in healthcare, it's the nature of the business, because I was intrigued because it's helping patients. Now, when you I've lived 10 years of my life in emerging markets. Yeah. I've created a foundation in Mexico, for example. We did also extramural surgery programs in the jungle, where of course we were from industry, we were providing the material. And there were certain moments where we actually recognized that it doesn't help just to give away something because you feel good because I have it and I give it for free to you. Because at the end, you create a void where somebody sees what exists and then suddenly it's no longer there because it's not sustainable, because it depends just on somebody providing it for free. So let's say it's a little bit the credo of by saying is, don't give people a fish, teach them how to fish. But again, I'm not just teaching them how to fish because not me, I'm providing them the money so that they can have a fishing business. So that when they fish with that, they're not only eating, but they're also making a business and selling of it. And that's impact investing. So for me, it was very natural when I knew about it. And when Jean-Philippe said, Florian, join, because you can really help here. There are skill sets which are fine. This is also why our products have changed from the pure blind funds, in a very early stage where Jean-Philippe really took a lot of risks of testing private equity in frontier markets in different sectors. We see now which are the sectors which really, where industry can follow. So it's becoming a real business. But also at the same time, when you understand that these people, it's not that they don't want to pay, they can pay. Usually they pay more than we pay for a product just to get certain things. And technology suddenly resolves that. So for me, the driving point was really this one. When I look back at the extramural surgery program we were supporting from an industry perspective in Chiapas, La Sierra La Candona, for the indigenous people. And there was one case of a little child, cliff lip, who was operated, went well, we all felt good. Truck goes off, and I was there because I was invited to be there, so I spent 10 days there. And then next year, the truck goes back, same procedure, and the child was no longer there. The child died. Why? Septic reaction, no doctor, no pharmacy, nothing. You're in the jungle. And this is when I recognized it's not enough just, to pile money and be happy to give it back. The only way is to invest in a regular way, in a sustainable way, and to drive profits, because that creates wealth. And I believe now you see the millennials, and this is actually beautiful because millennials millennials are driven by purpose. They know they will make money. They're not worried about the money. They want to make a difference. And that leads now that there's a huge, it's become a big theme. You have the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 ones, which are being embraced by more and more industry. Now you have big funds, also creating impact investing themes now. And again, impact investing is a little bit of spread, but also the impact investing industry is becoming much more mature and having much more defined and clearer metrics, how you measure the impact. Yeah, so that you can really say, they can make sure that you're doing what you want to do, not just using an SDG label. And that basically leads to a huge momentum. And then if you look at Singularity University, and I'm honored to one of the events we're doing in Geneva here at the end of April, that I will run the deep dive session on exponential energy, actually, with some examples of the companies who have invested and bringing the entrepreneurs in. And when you look at what they say is that the future of companies is data and customers. Everything in between can be replaced at any time. Now, if you look at data can be used against or in favor of you. Look at the scandal at Facebook now. Is it me controlling my opinion, or is it Facebook controlling my opinion, so that I respond, I react? It's a big dilemma. And we have a specific session on AI for good, which is driven by the UN, driven by the ITU. So we have panels, and I'm steering a panel there where we discuss specifically that AI for good. Because data, or AI in general, big data, might be a threat for the Western world because it cuts food chains, but it's a blessing for the emerging worlds. And the big researchers on these topics, they actually predict that, and actually I believe that so, that demographic and economic changes will be major. So that since I think a year or 2 years ago, for the first time in the human history, we have more people living in cities than in rural areas. And that will be reversed. Because you can do business wherever you are. You don't, there's no disadvantage to being outside of a city, thanks to technology. And the second thing is also that might then also change migration. While the rich countries, the developed countries, have major changes going on, and jobs being cut, things being obsolete or shifted, companies running out of business and others being created. You go in an area where you just leapfrog. And that might actually lead then that people will not move towards the developed countries, but away from into the developing countries, because the possibility for you to make more business, and become wealthier is there, easier and faster than it is in the old ones. So those are the topics where, back to your question, I say for me, my main driver is to do good, to make a difference. So the day I part, I've done my portion to help the planet and help the people. And of course, it has to be profitable, because otherwise it will not last.
It's so interesting. I mean, it feels like, there's different layers or different levels of impacting, and they have to do with leverage a lot. I mean, let's go back to the fish, right? You could basically give somebody a fish, right? That would be sort of like pretty much no leverage. Then you could teach somebody to fish, which would be already a lot more leverage. Or you could basically provide the platform that teaches them to fish, which is ways more leverage. So there's sort of like three, maybe there's more, of course, but 3 is always a good number.
Yes, and again, make business out of it.
Exactly.
Because fishing provides you a living and not just food.
Exactly. So this is really it's a whole other layer in impact through impact investing of leverage. So I find that incredibly fascinating because of that commercial viability as well. It's a lot more scalable that way as well, as a methodology, as a technology by in and of itself, which is, I think, why it's picking up so quickly now. I mean, it's sort of almost become a buzzword, just like digital transformation, right? But if you look at the core of it, it's really just it's there because of all the changes in our economy, in our society, and also in technology that enable this to work so well. So going a little bit into the presence right now, what are some of the, or maybe the one or two most exciting things you're currently working on that you're currently involved in?
So we at Bamboo, we focus on financial inclusion. So initially it was helping non-for-profit lending institutions to become regulated banks. And that in geographies where it's of course challenging, just geopolitical or country-wise certain challenge. But that actually worked quite well. It's not a very lucrative business financially at that time, because it was not technology driven. It's people and doing things and organizations, and to have them becoming regulated banks. This is now accelerated by fintech. So we do much more fintech investments. So we do, the ticket size is smaller. We go earlier in to help them to scale, because you can accelerate to bank unbanked people by technology. So it's consumer finance. It's not only providing let's say the $500 to $1,000 to a micro entrepreneur so that he can, scale up his business. This is really now going from B2B to B2C, thanks to technology. Very exciting stuff. The second, and we are always talking about the same population, whether it's in Africa, Asia, Latin America, they have the same problem, access and affordability, full stop. The second part is very exciting, is access to energy. Within the access to energy, we're focusing not really on the off-grid solar energy. Of course, there is 1.1 billion people without electricity at home. And they all have now smartphones, not smartphones, they have cell phones. They cannot use smartphones because they don't have electricity to charge the phone every day. This is why they have the feature phones for a week, and then somebody picks it up, charges it, they pay for it. They pay more for the charge for the airtime. And that's being changed now to off-grid solar or solar home units, which are connected and AI-driven and serviced from a distance. The workforce in the village on that, the individual units are automatically the charge algorithm is adjusted, messages to be sent if the panels have to be cleaned and stuff. So it's performance is measured every day, wherever you are in the world, through a cloud-based platform. But this is just the entrance, because at the end, you're providing a smart utility grid. Now you can extend that from the energy side, which is because it's rooftop powered. It's really telecom because it's TV and internet, Wi-Fi, adding on it. At a price point, it's because it's all financed. It goes mobile money, $2 per week paid by SMS. And now you can go into LPG gas, stoves. You can go into water supply. But then you can really go on, financial services, mobile wallets, insurances, micro lending, B2C again, where we're crossing back into so it's an incredible movement here, huge growth, huge market opportunity. That's an access to energy. And the third one is access to healthcare, which takes a little bit longer. And that's also being disrupted we leapfrog there basically, because there's technology today which replaces the need for labs, the need for specialists. And it's really just a patient touch point, whereas a pharmacy, a GP, all technology driven, point of care technology replaces the need for a lab, the digital, or let's say telemedicine, teleradiology, the need for specialists, so that the GP, doctor itself, can very quickly see the health status of a patient. But that's just to start with. Then you come really into predictive, and you come into preventive medicine, in consumer behavior, changing the consumer. So if somebody has diabetes, just by changing the behavior, the lifestyle, you have a higher quality of life, and it goes longer. This is one of the examples. So that's what we're looking at. A platform also we're investing in, the scaling platform is on access to healthcare, where of course the e-health, digital health, big data is a big component of it. That's
interesting, because it's getting you back into where you started, also in healthcare. It's a very interesting cycle as well, and it's very interesting because you're really working on this third layer of leverage on all fronts, which is this platform. Really, when we go back to the Fisher, it's really, really interesting because you're sort of like you're really investing in this highest point of leverage, and also, you know, with emerging economies, that's also a topic I want to quickly talk about, because maybe sort of like it transitions us into this future conversation. Because sometimes, like when I go to, you know, when I travel in emerging economies, it feels like, you know, compared to our country, Switzerland, right? They're more advanced in technology than we are in a very developed country like in Switzerland. And you know, also impact investing is sort of like not something that's been around for ages. So where do you feel like impact investing is going in the next couple of years?
So as sustainability is more and more in the focus, and people are getting in, you know, there's a certain awareness being created through the Sustainable Development Goals on one hand. On the other side, as we also see that global warming effects, you know, overpopulation, so there are natural catastrophes which are stronger and stronger, and more there are. And then also, you know, injustice, because now the poor people understand how the rich live because they can see it live online. You know, that creates frustration. So there's also this risk of, you know, people getting aggressive because it's unfair. So there are a lot of tendencies here which are very, let's say, dangerous, yeah, and can harm quality of life, quality of planet. And I think this is, because of this is where impact investing uses general ways, the normal ways of how you invest, how you measure it, and what you expect from it, but with a social scope, yeah, on a sustainability or environmental focus. And this is where now these big giant platforms, also in, you know, even the big funds are now raising huge amount of monies, focusing on sustainability or impact investing. So that impact investing is moving from a asset style in the past, more niche markets, more, you know, kind of wilder things where you go out there and you try to do good, and it's really moving to an asset class. And in the past, the impact investors, you know, have been, from the financial world, also been seen as tree huggers. You know, you are philanthropists, you know, want to make some money, or you have the philanthropists saying, you impact investors, you are really the same sharks as others, just to disguise themselves a little bit, you know, in a social way. And I think this is clearly proven that it's wrong. There is place for philanthropy. There's certain areas and certain things you will never make money with, but you have to do it. And then there's, of course, the ones only chasing IRRs, you know, their financial returns. And then there's a movement, you know, you can see that with the B Corp, you know, benefit corporation tendency, even in Switzerland being discussed, if this is a legal structure which might have certain tax optimizations or stimulations, so that the company is not only focusing on financial returns, which you have to, but also, you know, what are the social returns you deliver as a B Corp. And you can see that this is getting bigger and bigger. So from the overall investing volume, you know, the pie is moving faster towards impact investing. And when people now then understand that actually sustainability can drive your profit, it's not that sustainability has a trade-off on your financial returns, but it actually can drive your profit. And specifically because consumers, like millennials, just don't want to do anything else, you know, or want to buy anything else, whether it's the organic food and you have a higher price point, yeah, then you have to, of course, discuss whether it's really organic or not, or whether you move into some other fields like, you know, healthy cities and those things. So therefore, there's a real market, there's a demand, and therefore, I believe it has a very exciting future with major growth.
It's really interesting. It feels like we're getting close to that tipping point, like, you know, because it is a movement, and there's a tipping point usually between it's still acceptable versus it's no longer acceptable. Like the status quo is still acceptable versus it's no longer acceptable. And there's sort of like that tipping point that is crossed when it's going from acceptable to unacceptable in society, in public, in certain stakeholder groups and things like that. And it feels like it's drawing very quickly towards that as well, because policies are already changed because of movements like that. And many things are adjusting. And now what you talked about is basically sustainability is the driver now for profits versus the trade-off, which was before the thinking, right? Now it's suddenly the driver because of everything changed. Generations are changing, cultures are, everything has changed to a place where it's getting less and less and less acceptable. And there's no way to change that. It's just the evolution of humanity as well that drives that change. And I'm very fascinated by that because every time that tipping point is hit, basically, the whole waterfall comes down basically. And I'm very, very excited about, this future as well, about impact investing and where things are heading. So I really appreciate you, being here and sharing the story of impact investing as well, your story, and these golden nuggets and insights into how this thing works, because most people also don't really exactly understand what is this thing really, because it's still fairly new. So thank you so much for being on the show, Florian. I really appreciate it. And we're going to link below the video to the sources, like, your profile, the company page, and things like that. So people can also get in touch if they want to know more, if they want to learn more about the impact investing and have an exchange. And also, hopefully some interesting fund opportunities coming along that way as well. So thank you so much for being on the show, Florian.
My pleasure, really pleasure, and glad to inspire, hopefully, some people to do something different, and looking forward to get in touch with kindred spirits.